My husband can't make me finish. So the title basically says it all. My husband and I have been together 10 years, married for 6. The intimate life has gotten boring to say the least. We went from having fun time every day to once maybe twice a month. I brought it up to him because I told him I missed it. He brushed it off and told me he, quote, felt comfortable, so he didn't really think to put in any effort. That made me sad, but L expressed how I felt and put it out there. Nothing changed. Still very infrequent. Regardless, I was watching a TikTok the other day and the woman was talking about how a man has never made her finish. I thought it was absurd, but it had me thinking about our intimate life. Has he ever made me finish if I'm doing the work? It's pitiful, honestly. He initiates it because I stopped since I was turned down so many times. The initiation is most likely him asking me to go down on him. There's not really any touching. Or kissing. Which I miss. It's usually me going down until I feel like getting on top. I usually do all the work. Sometimes I can get off. Other times he finishes so fast I don't have a chance to. And if he does, I have to get off of him. There's no making sure I get there too. No foreplay. And it's been like this for as long as I can remember. I don't really even remember when he took his time to take care of my needs. I see what the lady in the TikTok was talking about. I'm having a bit of a meltdown because he thinks there's nothing wrong, but I am frustrated every single day. But I also feel like my nagging would turn him off from trying as well. My husband is the only man I've been with, so I don't know if this is normal or what. Someone please help.
My lesbian best friend said she has feelings for me, and now we are both confused. I'm a guy and my best friend of 6 years is a lesbian. We moved in together for school, and now she might be bisexual and has feelings for me, and I have no idea what to do next. I have known this girl, let's call her Kay, since we were 14 and now we're 20. I met Kay when we were paired up in a group project for this one class 6 years ago. I found out we had a lot in common and we became friends. Over time, I developed a huge crush on her. Sophomore year, I asked her to homecoming and she said yes. It was a good time, but after it didn't really lead to anything, I got the sense that she didn't like me the way I liked her. Junior year, Kay came out as lesbian. Honestly, I wasn't super surprised, but I was a little heartbroken. I decided to put all my feelings away and just be supportive. I was really enjoying my senior year. I started dating this girl the summer before school started and things were going well until the virus hit. My girlfriend broke up with me because she couldn't handle a relationship at the time. I was sad about that, but more upset that I was going to miss things like prom and senior trip. Kay knew I was upset and invited me over for a fake prom, which consisted of us getting dressed up for photos and immediately going inside to play old Wii games and watch movies. She even bought some of my favorite snacks. Still probably the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. First year of college sucked. Nothing noteworthy happened other than Kay and I going to the same school. Kay started to date this girl who I'm 99% sure hated me for no reason. They broke up in the summer and now we go into sophomore year. Kay and I decided to get a place near campus together for the school year. Her mom thought it was weird, but her dad thought it was a good idea. We've had lots of good times so far. My favorite thing about living together has been our late-night talks. We talk about anything from school, sports, hot girls, bad hookups, and more. Last night during one of our talks, Kay randomly brings up that she might be bisexual. Not going to lie. I felt a little jealous thinking that she hooked up with a random guy, but she tells me that she has feelings for me. I kind of laughed it off at first until she started crying. She said she started having feelings for me a month ago and was super confused about her sexuality. I apologized for laughing and said, we'd talk tomorrow. I didn't want to make any bad decisions that could ruin our friendship. So right now, she's at class and I'm just alone thinking, this is literally a dream come true. So why am I hesitating at all? I guess I don't want her to just immediately change her mind after and make things weird between us. I'm anxiously waiting for her to get back. I really do love her though. I never thought I'd have a chance at this kind of love. Any advice on what I should say to her when she gets back? I feel like I'm overthinking this. What racist things do people do that they don't think is racist? I'm a white dude that has lived in Japan for 16 years. A while back I went on a date with a Japanese girl and we went to a bar in central Tokyo. The bar wouldn't let me in because I wasn't Japanese. This has happened so many times I didn't bother me, however the girl got really upset. After we were rejected from the bar, she said, I don't know why they wouldn't let you in, you were with me, I'm Japanese. And I was thinking that kind of misses the point. Can you imagine if a white and black dude went to a bar together in the States and they don't let the black dude in and the white guy says, I can't believe they didn't let you in, you're with me, I'm white. I even called the cops on a club once that had a sign that said Japanese only. The cops came in, I complained, in Japanese, And the cop said in a super friendly tone, "Well, yeah, the sign says Japanese only and you're not Japanese. What's the problem here? There's another club down the street that allows foreigners. I like that one myself. Why don't you go check that one out?" Japan is so inherently racist and xenophobic to the point that they don't even know that they are racist and xenophobic. It's just normal behavior to them, but for some reason everybody loves Japan, and they somehow get a free pass on it. Oh, and full disclosure, I ended up marrying the girl that I went to date with. Now we're racist to each other all the time. It's super fun. Is it normal for my son to watch me undress? My son is now married and 27 years old. He still watches me even though I'm 50 years old. It started when I caught him in action. He was in his 20s, and my poor boy didn't have a girlfriend at that time. I had stepped out of the shower to my room in my undergarments, drying my hair with a towel, to wear clothes that I had laid out on the bed. I would usually close my door to the room, but I must have forgotten that particular day, and that's when I saw my son walk past the room. Through the corner of my eye, I could see him taking a quick peep at me, and when I had turned my face towards the door, he wasn't there anymore. It made me laugh. The next day, the very same thing happened. I had kept the door open and saw him walking by when I came out of the shower. When this happened on the third day, it confirmed that this was no coincidence. I am someone who has struggled with weight my whole life, and as a chubby woman, when he was spying on me, made me more confident about my body. This trend continued for a while, where I acted innocent and wore my clothes in front of him, and one day I decided to give him an eyeful. The next morning I stepped out of the shower naked. Judging by his look, this was something which my son hadn't anticipated. I looked towards the door, and this time he was too slow, and so I caught him officially. I called his name out and instructed him to come in. He walked in scared and had his head down and apologized. I covered my breasts with one hand and had my crotch covered with the other. I pardoned him and told him it was okay as long as it stayed between the two of us. I uncovered myself and put hands on my hips and told him he didn't have to spy on me anymore and could just look at me whenever he wanted to. He was shocked and had his mouth open. He couldn't believe it. His eyes were fixated at my breasts. He became shy and he wanted to step out of the room, but I told him to stay put. I turned around 360 and gave him a show and asked him about my body. He said it looked great, and he claimed that I was the first woman he had seen naked, so that made my day. It felt really exciting when he saw me in my birthday suit. With time, he became normalized with my body and nudity. He moved out and got married, and last week he came to visit with his wife. His wife must have gone out somewhere, and when it was just the two of us at home, he asked me when I would be taking my shower. This was my cue to get undressed, and so I did. I feel flattered every time he does that, and I feel beautiful that I still look desirable to men his age. I surprised my girlfriend with Taylor Swift tickets. She wanted to bring her friend instead. Me and my girlfriend have been dating for 3 years now. My girlfriend is a huge Taylor Swift fan and was really excited when she found out Taylor would be performing at MetLife Stadium, right near us. I decided to surprise her with Taylor Swift concert tickets, since I knew she really wanted to go. I called in sick the day the tickets dropped and waited in the Ticketmaster queue for 2 hours. Finally, when it opened up, I bought 2 seats for $400 each, presumably one for her and another for me. When she came back from work that night, I surprised her with the tickets, and she was ecstatic. However, when I claimed I was excited to go with her, she got very confused and claimed she thought the 2 tickets were for her and her best friend, who is also a big Taylor Swift fan. I was very disappointed since I believed that this was an experience we could do together, and it would be something we would remember for the rest of our lives. My girlfriend could tell I was upset and said she would be happy to go with me instead. I told her she should go with whoever she wanted to go with more, and to not go with me just because it was what I had planned. After hearing this, my girlfriend immediately called her friend and told her that they were going to the Taylor Swift concert together. Ouch. I told my girlfriend that if her friend wanted to go with her, she had to pay the $400 for the ticket, and her friend agreed to. While my girlfriend and her friend went together and both had a great time, I felt betrayed since she chose her over me. While I know my girlfriend's BFF is a much bigger Taylor Swift fan than me, I was still excited to go since I've never been to a concert before, and I like to listen to some of Taylor Swift's songs. Like I said before, I also believe this would be a memory we could both remember together. Should I have done things differently and not given up my ticket so willingly? I'm scared of my wife, and it low-key turns me on. Let me start off by saying that I'm a 27-year-old guy, and my wife is 26. We've been together for 9 years and married for 7. It's safe to say that our relationship has grown in ways I never thought possible, but I've stumbled upon a realization that I never thought I'd admit to. I'm kind of turned on by how intimidating my wife can be. I've always been an introvert. I shy away from confrontation and generally just prefer to be left to my own devices. When my wife and I started dating when we were around 17, it was she who did all the pursuing. I had liked her for like 3 years, but never had the courage to tell her. So when I finally did, she took charge and asked me out. In fact, she initiated almost every milestone in our relationship. She's an extrovert to the core, loud, fierce, and never backing down, especially if she knows she's right. And those are all qualities I genuinely love about her. But a couple of weeks ago, something strange happened. I was out with my friends, and we were casually talking about our spouses. One of my friends made a comment about how intense my wife can be, and without thinking, I blurted out that it kind of turned me on. I immediately blushed and felt embarrassed, staying quiet for the rest of the outing. But the thought stuck with me. When I got home, I started thinking about it more and realized how much her attitude and strong nature resonated with me, and not just in an intimate way. Whenever she's passionate about something and stands up for it, I find myself feeling a surge of pride and excitement. I can't help but smile like a goofy teenager thinking, that's my wife. Today, something happened that brought all these feelings to the forefront again. We got into a bit of a fight. We usually don't argue in front of the kids, but we do have moments when we're not as loving to one another. She was feeding our daughter, and when I walked into the room, she gave me the nastiest glare you could think of. I was taken aback, and yet I felt this strange thrill. I can't quite put my finger on why I feel this way or if this is even normal. My wife's affair just ended, and she wants to play it off as nothing happened. My wife and I have been together for 12 years and married for 8. For about 6 months, my wife has been very distant and very protective of her phone. In hindsight, I probably should have seen this red flag. Her escapes were, I'm going to Target to return something, but then she wouldn't come home for 3 or 4 hours. I'd ask her why, and she'd always say she was just looking through the store with her Starbucks. So I didn't think much of it. Possible red flag too. This is where it really jumped on my radar when I realized she did this every Saturday afternoon. Plus, she never came back with a Starbucks cup, and when I checked the account, it didn't show any charges. So one day I asked if I made her happy. She giggled and said yes in a sarcastic way and rolled her eyes. I have to say, watching that hurt, especially when she used to immediately say yes, making eye contact and giving me a kiss. So what I did next made me feel bad, but I bought an AirTag and placed it in the lining of her purse. I only did this because when I confronted her about her Saturday afternoon trip, she got very defensive about it, saying she deserves time to herself, which I agree, but then said Chris likes seeing her. I was like, who is Chris? My wife said he works at the Starbucks. Anyway, one Saturday after she left to go to Target, I was watching her location, and she did go to Target for about 10 minutes. Then she left and went to an apartment building. That's when I got in my car and went to that location. I went to the front office to see if I could get access to the apartment and told them the story. Turns out Chris has always been a jerk to the front office, and they were more than happy to help. They lead me to the apartment and let me in. I could hear noises coming from the bedroom with the door cracked open a bit. I took out my phone and from the cracked open door recorded about 30 seconds of them doing the deed. I left and drove home in shock. I couldn't believe she'd do this to me. I know I'm not the easiest guy to get along with. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and I've been diagnosed with PTSD and a TBI. For years I've been doing therapy and trying like hell to be the husband she deserved. This whole thing shattered me to the core. When my wife came home later, I was in a mood, so I completely shut down. Usually she asks what she can do to help me, but this time she just said, "Another mood, huh? Oh, well, I'm going to shower." I was like that until Monday when I could see a lawyer. Showed my lawyer everything I had and that I wanted a divorce. He said he'd write up the paperwork and have it for me in like a week. Well, that turned into 3 because he had gotten sick and wasn't able to work. No biggie. But during those 3 weeks of waiting for the papers, my wife went back to her normal ways. Only thing I could come up with was the affair ended, but I wasn't sure. After 3 weeks, I get the papers and gave them to her. She was shocked and asked why I wanted a divorce. I showed her the video and she was in shock at first, then angered that I'd follow her and record that. She explained it meant nothing and everything's back to normal since he ended it. A part of me still loves her still, but the other part is destroyed, and the 30 seconds video is burned into my brain. She suggested marriage counseling, but I don't know what to do. It hurts to think about my situation and I needed an outlet. So I came here to vent, and I guess if anyone reads this, if they have some advice or anything. What started off as a small lie, but then snowballed into this, is my life now. My wife thinks we met on the internet. We didn't. We actually met on a bus, almost a full year before we met for the first time. I was utterly captivated by the way she looked, the way she dressed, and oh God, how lucky I felt when she sat down beside me. I deliberately missed my stop just to stay next to her for an extra 30 minutes, and then got off where she did and immediately stopped, pretending to make a phone call as she walked off. I waited until she was too far away to hear me, and seeing that she hadn't looked back at any point, I found the courage to follow her home. With her address at hand, I returned to my own home to try and find the name. I didn't have any luck trawling public records, so in desperation, I had MySpace bring up the profile of every female user in the area. I scrolled through page after page of profile pic thumbnails, and I recognized her instantly. What followed was 9 months of trying to contact her. I didn't rate my chances highly, so I decided to contact her first on some fake profiles to give myself a safe sandbox to get to know her without any risk of my mistakes damaging my chances with her, when I felt I knew enough about her to contact her from a genuine profile. It was tough at first. The first 2 accounts didn't even get responses out of her, so I started looking at the profiles of her existing friends and mimicked those, copying their interests and music tastes. I started chatting with her, first from one identity, then from another. At one point I was talking to her under 3 different names at once, each with a different personality, as I tried to figure out who her perfect guy was. Eventually, when I was ready, I friended one of my fake profiles with my real one, and then had the fake me invite the real me into a group chat with her. We connected instantly. It was magical. I could always say exactly what she wanted to hear. My sense of humor was perfect, my politics and worldview mirrored her own, and we loved the same music. We had so much in common. It took me just 1 more month to finally meet her in person for the first time. I was absolutely paranoid she'd recognize me as the guy on the bus that one time, but she didn't. 2 years later I married her, despite our entire relationship being founded on my lies. Whenever I think about it, I feel like a scumbag, a creep, a stalker, or some kind of criminal. But then I look at her and she's here, happy with me still. It's me who suffers with the truth, not her. My neighbor who thought I was gay my whole life found out I'm in fact straight, a hard way. I, 25 male, have grown up beside these neighbors, 50s female and 50s male, my whole life, and close to their daughter, 24 female. We spent almost all of our time together. Her mom has always thought I was feminine, not quite right, and just funny. Bet she thought I was frickin' hilarious last night walking in on me deep in her daughter. I came home to my parents' house from working out of state, and the neighbor's daughter saw me pull in. We talked, reconnected, and decided to chill since her parents were out of town and she was house-sitting. We rode around listening to music, smoking her up, dinner and lil Netflix and chill. One thing led to another and eventually had her legs hanging on my shoulders, making it sound like mac and cheese. We didn't hear the door, but we heard the "oh my God, I'm diving for my clothes." Her mom's freaking out, and she's covering herself with a blanket. I go running out of the front door with just shorts on as her dad's carrying stuff to the door. I hopped into my car, drove off like a bat out of hell. Now I'm sitting here beside the lake in my car. My mom texted me saying neighbors are furious, and we all need to talk this out. My dad called trying to be stern, but knowing that we were both adults and grew up together, he just said he's surprised it didn't happen sooner. I cheated on my boyfriend and now he's a millionaire. I cheated on my boyfriend when I was 21. I'm 33 now and I still think about it pretty much every day. I've also never been unfaithful since, and I think it's because how he reacted to finding out. I drove over to his house, sat him down at the table, looked him in the eye and said, "Jake, I'm really, really sorry, but I've been unfaithful to you. If I was in his situation, I would go absolutely crazy. I'd say something like, 'Who is it?' or 'How could you do this to me?' Instead, he got up, walked to the door, and just said, 'Get out.' I said, 'You're not going to yell at me.' And he said, 'What's the point?' So I got up, and as I walked to the door, I said, 'I'm really, really sorry.' He just looked at me and said, 'I don't ever want to see you again. Don't text me. Don't call me. Don't come to my house, and I wish you the best of luck.' Remember, this guy is only 21 at the time, and he was that mature about the situation. I really, really messed up, and I didn't realize how much of a catch he was until he was already gone. He owns a business now, and has a beautiful wife and kids making 3 times more than I do. I'm just happy he's doing good, and I hate myself every day for doing that to such an amazing guy. I guess the main point of this post is to show that no matter how bad things are now, it's only temporary and you should use it as fuel to help you be a better person in the future. I made a dude get his nuts waxed on the first date after he lied to me. When I was in my early 20s and online dating was just starting, I made a profile and said I was just not going to be into 2 things: smokers, and people with kids. Just that. You could be anything else, and if the chemistry is there, we are all good. I meet this guy early in the morning for a breakfast date, and we are hitting it off averagely. No sparks but no red flags. The date goes for 2.5 hours, breakfast taking forever, until we are splitting the bill and he tells me he has a kid. I ask him if he read my profile to know that I was not interested in that, and he says, "Yes, I read that, but knew that if you just spent some time with me, you'd see how great I am, and how you'd be willing to see past that." I was floored, as now he wasted 3 hours of my life and was okay with being a liar. That was unacceptable to me. I said, "Well, I don't want this date to end, but I have to go across town to get my Brazilian, where they take all the hair off, including the bumhole. Done in an hour. Want to come with me and get one too? It's not painful, a total lie. And I think it's attractive on men to be clean there. No pressure, but I'm pretty busy the rest of the week, and this is my only free day." He was all about following me anywhere. I told the ladies that this was his first time and that they should take everything, including the butt. He held my hand between a curtain, and we both got them done at the same time. He screamed a lot, but was a champ and went through with it. I made him pay for his own and never called him again. If you are out there, Chris, please don't lie to women on the first date. It's a really bad way to start a relationship. What's your most disgusting childhood story? I didn't wash under my foreskin for 15 years. This happened when I was in 9th grade. I grew up not knowing anything about my weenie or how to clean it. My parents never taught me anything about genitals. I never asked, I only knew where the pee came out. So one day in 9th grade biology, our teacher covered the male reproductive system. She reached a point where she mentioned that for uncircumcised males, the foreskin is supposed to retract over the head of the rod. I was pretty shocked because that's certainly not how mine worked. By that time, I was a daily meat beater, and my foreskin could barely go back enough for me to see the entrance of the urethra. So armed with my new knowledge about how my weenie was supposed to work, I went home, and a few Google searches led me to discover that I had a severe phimosis. So being the young buck I am, I also Googled how to fix it. There were two options: either tell my parents and have them take me to a doctor for surgery, or do stretching exercises. Not wanting to tell any, either tell my parents and have them take me to a doctor for surgery, or do stretching exercises. Not wanting to tell any of this to my parents, or have someone come near my willy with a scalpel, I opted for the latter option. I got some baby oil, the only lube available at the time besides my mom's bottle of expensive olive oil, and went to work. After about 4 hours of stretching, I finally made some progress. I could see a slightly bigger area now, not just the opening of my pee hole like before. Everything was going great except for one thing. The underside of my foreskin was releasing one of the most pungent cheese smells I had ever encountered. It was the most disgusting thing I've smelled even to this day. It finally hit me. My weenie had not been clean my entire life up until that point. Over the next couple days, I kept stretching. Once I was able to see more surface area of my willy, I discovered this thick, gooey, greenish-brown sludge leaking from under my foreskin. After some quick research, I learned that this was smegma, also known as cheese. I cleaned it off whenever it seeped out during my stretching exercises. As much as it disgusted me, everything was still going fine. That was about to change. So this was about 10 days into my stretching, and I'd gotten my foreskin about to the halfway mark. What story is 100% true but still blows your mind? In 2004, Mitch was in his final semester at a college in Louisiana when he met another senior named Kayla. The moment he saw her, he knew he was in love. After graduation, the pair stayed in Louisiana and moved in together while they got their careers off the ground. He was completely infatuated with her. 2 years later, the pair got married, and shortly after, Kayla got pregnant. By the time their daughter was born, Mitch was making so much money that Kayla became a stay-at-home mom full-time. By the time their daughter was born, Mitch was making so much money that Kayla became a stay-at-home mom full-time. By the time their daughter was 2 years old, they had their son. Mitch was a complete family man, and his life was perfect. A few months after his son's birth, Mitch was lounging in the TV room when something strange caught his eye. He noticed that the red lamp in the corner of the room was looking blurry. He rubbed his eyes and looked around the room, but nothing else was blurry. When he focused back onto the lamp, he noticed that the lamp was still distorted. Even after turning the TV off and walking over to the lamp, it was still blurry. When he focused back onto the lamp, he noticed that the lamp was still distorted. Even after turning the TV off and walking over to the lamp, it was still blurry. He didn't have bad eyesight and was completely confused. He thought that it must have been an anomaly, so he turned back to the family room and turned the TV back on. However, No matter how hard he tried, the distorted lamp was in his peripheral vision the whole time. It bothered him to the point that he turned the TV back off and went to investigate the lamp once more. This time, he noticed that the lamp was not only blurry, but it was now upside down. Now he was genuinely concerned that there was something wrong with him. Nothing else in the entire room was blurry or upside down. A few minutes later, his wife and kids get home, and he decides to not tell his family about it. He is determined to figure it out himself. After dinner, the family plays some games together. Then everybody goes upstairs and falls asleep. But after everyone had gone to sleep, Mitch was laying in bed thinking about this lamp. Finally, he snuck out of his bed and he just stared at this lamp. He spent hours watching this lamp morph, turn upside down, and get more distorted. The next day, Kayla found Mitch passed out on the couch. Still, Mitch still doesn't tell her about the lamp. Kayla asked what was going on, and he told her that he wasn't feeling well and was not going to go to work that day. But Mitch didn't go to work for 3 more days. He just sat on the couch, fixated on the lamp. Kayla picked up on his strange behavior, but Mitch never told her about the lamp. He kept telling her that he wasn't feeling well. She pleads for him to go see a doctor, but every time Mitch would say he's all right. As this lamp became larger and more distorted, Mitch became unable to respond to his wife. He became totally unresponsive, so Kayla decided to call a doctor to figure out what was going on. While she's on the phone, Mitch notices that the lamp is growing exponentially. It grew to the size of the room itself, and all he could see was the color red. Then Mitch starts to notice voices and screams coming from somewhere in the distance. He feels this blinding pain in his head. He opens his eyes and sees that he's laying on the sidewalk across from a building at his college with a crowd of people staring at him. He has no idea what's going on, so he naturally starts scanning the crowd looking for his wife and kids. But before he could find his family, a police officer ran over to him, picked him up, ran back to his police car, put him in the back, and drove off. When Mitch is in the back of the police car, he asks the officer what's going on. The officer would tell him that he was attacked by a huge college football player and had been knocked unconscious. Mitch then asks where his wife and kids are, to which the officer said that he had no idea. That's when it clicked. The lamp wasn't real. Neither was his wife and kids. It was all a hallucination while he was unconscious. He had experienced 10 years of his life in just a few moments. Mitch was taken to the hospital where he would make a full physical recovery. Unfortunately, after he was released, he was horribly depressed and had to get intense therapy to grieve for the family that didn't exist. Unfortunately, after he was released, he was horribly depressed and had to get intense therapy to grieve for the family that didn't exist. Today I messed up by agreeing to a trio with my best friend. I, 19 female, and my best friend Eva, 19 female, have been inseparable since 5th grade. Her and I are polar opposites. I'm mixed on the shorter side with brown eyes and hair, and a bit chunky, I'll admit. While Eva is white, blonde hair, green eyes with a lanky athletic build. She's very extroverted. I'm on the shyer side. She's the one that got all the boys' attention. I was the supportive best friend. I've always thought she was the most attractive girl I've had the pleasure of meeting. Earlier last week, Eva said she's been watching a lot of trio adult films and started having thoughts about being with another girl. I'm bisexual myself, and pretty shy when it comes to intimacy, as I only lost my virginity last year and have had one intimate partner since. Eva, again, is the exact opposite. She's been an intimate since her early teens and has been open about her intimate life. We have always joked about being gay for each other. We give each other a quick peck on the lips when we have to go after hanging out, and we even made a pact that if we're married by 30, we'll marry each other. So this led me to jokingly saying we should have a trio with someone to find out if she's bi or not. And she seriously agreed, which I obviously didn't turn down. We decided to make a Tinder account with both of us explaining how we just want someone, preferably a guy, as to her request, to join us, no strings attached. After finding a suitable match, we met up beforehand to explain the boundaries and rules we talked about. The next day would be when it all happened. For me it was a great experience, and afterwards Eva agreed. Now, as much as me and Eva are opposite, one thing we absolutely do have in common is our taste in men. I don't want to sound pretentious, but I do feel the man paid a bit more attention to me than Eva. Later, the guy we were intimate with gave me his number afterwards while Eva was cleaning up in the bathroom. I thought he did the same with her. This is where it all falls apart. After the fact, she said she said no strings attached, but she wanted to see the guy again. I of course told her to go for it, but when she checked on Tinder to message him, he is unmatched and she wasn't too happy about. I just said to text him, and she said she didn't have his number. Confused, I said, well, he gave it to me. She got absolutely furious, saying how that was selfish and rude, that I was trying to keep him for myself, and I wanted too much attention from men. I tried to explain I thought he had also given her his number, but she wouldn't listen. We haven't had a fight this big ever. She hasn't called or texted me back since then. I feel like such a bad friend for letting a random person come between us like that. I will admit I did text the guy telling him the situation, and we have had a couple of conversations since. I just don't want 8 years of friendship going down the drain, especially if it's my fault. My boyfriend took his shirt off in front of me for the first time. It changed our lives. My boyfriend and I have been together for 8 months, and he has been hesitant to take his shirt off around me. He was S8 by one of his uncles from the age of 9 until he was 13 years old, and the trauma he has is still there. He never took his shirt off as a kid and gets really uncomfortable when people touch him. He didn't let me hug him or hold his hand the first month we were together. The first time he asked for a hug, I nearly cried. He is the most handsome man in the world and has the biggest heart imaginable. I'm happy to be his girlfriend. He is really into fitness and goes to the gym almost every day. He started working out when he was 15 as a way for him to take back control of his body, and he really enjoys it. He struggles with anxiety and considers me and the gym his safe spaces. He has a really nice body and works hard to maintain his physique. Last night he came to my apartment and was complaining about being sore. We were laying on my bed watching TV, and he kept moving around and trying to get comfortable. He fell downstairs 2 months ago and sprained his AC joint. Yesterday was the first time he has been able to work out that shoulder. He was really uncomfortable, so I asked him if I could rub and massage it for him. He shut the idea down initially. However, I assured him that he was safe with me and I would not do anything to him he didn't want. He was still unsure, but said he wanted to take this step with me. I offered to take my shirt off with him, and after a minute of reassurance, he agreed. We took off our shirts and he looked so beautiful. He moved up in front of me and I began rubbing his shoulders. He flinched at first, but relaxed and said it was helping. He asked me not to touch his lower back, so I stayed around his shoulders and neck. I massaged his shoulders for about a half hour and told him all the things I love about him, and he was so calm and relaxed. He spent the night, and when I woke up this morning, he was in between my arms. We didn't go to sleep like that, so he must have moved next to me in the middle of the night. I started rubbing his back and he woke up and moved closer. It was our first time sharing a moment of intimacy, and it was so beautiful. He left an hour later and sent me a text thanking me for treating him with love and respect. I did it. I can't begin to express how I feel. Today I messed up by cheating with my coworker and planning to run away together. I work in international live events that take weeks to pull off. I typically coordinate them and work with a team to install and operate. I'm close with my coworkers, but we live across the world and fly into every event. I've met most of my coworkers in person, but at this event we had someone new working sound, Clint. I'd seen him in Zoom calls, but we hadn't interfaced directly. This event was a big one for the company, a big headliner and big partners with a lot of money being tossed around. I arrived at the install, got caught up to speed, met Clint, and got to work. One by one, my coworkers were sent off to other events. Clint and I were left to finish everything up, but bad weather and huge letdowns by one of our vendors had us in hot water. We started working 15 to 20-hour days to get everything done on time. After our long haul days, Clint and I would hang out and blaze. Legally, we had a lot in common. And we were vibing like neither of us had felt before. We were both married, unhappily. His wife had a bunch of medical problems and was really good at spending money and never leaving school. My husband had turned into an angry person, had built up a pile of debt, and was not putting anything into the relationship. It started out platonic, but things got extremely stressful, and our intimate tension started building up. The lack of sleep, stress, and my lower tolerance for Zaza left me questioning everything about my life. We both felt like the other person was an extension of ourselves. We were kindred spirits. Slowly, Clint started making moves, and suddenly dinners were turning into dates, and we were hanging out in each other's hotel rooms. We crossed many lines, but right as we crossed the final line, my brain kicked back in, and we decided to take care of our lives before going further. Over the last few days at the event, Clint and I continued to be close. We made plans to leave our spouses, sell our houses, and travel together. We created a bucket list of places to go, things to do, and see together. We even talked about eventually building a little cabin. Clint had planned on getting a tattoo dedicated to me when he returned home. At the end of the event, we went our separate ways and kept in touch virtually. Lots of dirty texting and unprofessionalism all around. We had agreed we wouldn't tell our partners about the affair, as they each have mental health issues, but we planned to divorce and move on with our lives. After a few days at home, I talked with my husband and asked for a divorce. I told him I wanted to move away and start my life over. Clint talked to his wife, but things were messier. She was volatile, and her family made it difficult for Clint to outright leave her. Eventually, I noticed Clint was becoming distant, still intimate, but not as emotionally available. He sent me pictures of his new tattoos, which were nothing like what he had said he was planning for me. Alarm bells were going off in my head, but I kept plodding along, planning mine and our escape. Clint went off to a series of anniversary-related dates with his wife and kept leaving me on read. I asked him what was going on a number of times. Finally, after weeks of mixed signals, Clint told me he was having doubts. We video chatted during work, and he told me he owed it to his wife to try and make things work. Now, I'm left to pick up the pieces of my life. Most of my friends are my co-workers, so I have no one to talk to about my heartbreak. I don't have the money to fix my problems at home or to leave and live alone in another country. There's no going back with my husband, as I know it would be wrong and I'm no longer interested in carrying the relationship. I'll see Clint again in a few weeks at another event, where we'll likely be left alone for hours at a time. But he plans to stay faithful to his wife, and we never even got to have the mind-blowing lovemaking we talked about. Another event where we'll likely be left alone for hours at a time, but he plans to stay faithful to his wife, and we never even got to have the mind-blowing lovemaking we talked about. I got my sister's bully deported. My sister was bullied relentlessly in high school for something she had literally zero control over, a certain part of her anatomy. Without going into details, she felt terrible about it, and it more or less ruined her life as an insecure 15-year-old girl. The girl was responsible for most of the cruel bullying, and the one who gave her a particularly cruel nickname related to her physical issue was called Nadia. Nadia was a foreign exchange student at our school. Nadia was beautiful, she was cruel, and she didn't give any FCKs about anyone but herself. I wasn't Miss Popular myself, but I had to protect my sister from having her life ruined, and I felt a very strong urge to get back at her tormentors. They say to kill a dragon with many heads, you gotta cut off the main head. So that's what I did. I learned that the father of Nadia was very conservative. Her whole family back home was. So I started spreading rumors about her being very promiscuous and ensured these rumors reached the family she was staying with. This apparently caused her some trouble, but I wasn't done. I threw a party one night when my parents were gone. I invited Nadia, who gladly came as I was, her older girl somehow, and she never said no to a chance to get hammered. Because yes, there was a lot of liquor. I made sure of that. Took pictures of everyone drinking and having fun. That same night when everyone left, I put it on my Facebook and tagged Nadia on it. She had this option turned on where everything she is tagged in is automatically allowed on her timeline. So a picture of her hammered and very skimpily dressed made its way to her page. Because of it being the middle of the night, she must not have noticed until the next day in the morning, so it stayed on for hours. But due to her parents' time zone being vastly different, I was sure they would see it before she had a chance to take it down. They did. She was gone the next week from school and flown back to her home country. Apparently her parents had to save her from being corrupted or something, so she was gone. My sister was safe from ridicule as word of my involvement spread, and let's just say people didn't really want to mess with her after seeing how far I was willing to go to protect my little sister. My husband missed our daughter's birth, so my brother convinced him I was dead. My husband refused to answer my calls while I was in labor, and my brother played a horrible prank. Now my husband is furious, I won't cut him off. My husband and I got in a fight prior to my daughter's birth a week ago, when he casually suggested a paternity test for our daughter when she was born. To be clear, this was completely out of the blue with no warning or reason. I'm a homebody who works remotely with no male friends other than my brother. I told him that he was accusing me of infidelity, and he said he just wanted to be sure, and kept bringing it up until I told him, after 3 days of him asking and the stress starting to make me physically ill, that I didn't want to talk to him and left to my brother's house. I called him while I was gone and tried to work it out, but he refused. After all this, I went home the next day to grab some things while he was at work, and I went into labor. I called him 16 times, before calling my brother, who called him another half a dozen times himself while on the way to pick me up and then on the way to the hospital. It was a horrible and traumatic birth. I started crowning in the car, and the doctor delivered my daughter in the back of my brother's van because I was too far along to move me, before rushing me in when I kept bleeding. It was horrible. I hated it all. My brother's wife, who is a nurse, even told me she honestly thought I wouldn't make it. I also opted for a hysterectomy as it came to that, or something more dangerous. I only ever wanted one or none, but my husband wants a large family. I'm not that great with kids and actually never saw me having children my whole life. I'm trying to bond with my daughter, but it's been hard. The point is that during this, while I was returning from surgery, 10 hours after I called, my husband finally responded and asked why I hadn't answered his call. However, my brother had my phone and was so angry that he said, "This is her brother, I'm at the hospital. She didn't make it," and turned it off. My husband rushed over and got there when I had just woken up and started shouting until the security forced him out, and then didn't get to see our daughter until the next day because I was mostly asleep and apparently they needed my signature to allow him back. My sister-in-law thinks it was horribly cruel but that he deserved it. But my brother stands by his prank and says that he only gave my husband 10 minutes of the same fear he had felt at my side for over 10 hours. Whenever he sees my husband, he also keeps telling him that I nearly died because we waited for him. My brother used to be mostly indifferent to my husband, but now he absolutely hates him. You can see it in his face whenever my husband enters the room. And he's been visiting a lot because he doesn't trust my husband to care for me while I'm still healing. My husband is furious that he won't apologize and that I won't make him, and yelled at me when I said that the only reason my brother had my phone was because he wasn't there. I am trying to be empathetic. I know he feels guilty. I've spoken to my therapist and she says the apathy I'm feeling is likely general and not solely focus on him from lingering shock from the trauma. But didn't say much about the prank. My mother-in-law has been texting me to say that my family is horribly cruel for the prank and that I should go no contact with my brother, and now my husband is saying the same. I just don't know what to do. I'm not in a good headspace. It's been hard to be in the same room with my husband, and I've been sleeping in the guest room with my daughter. He brought up the paternity once, and I just exhaustedly told him to either get out of my face or go stay with his mom if he's planning on stressing me out even more. My wife told me to choose between her or my mom, so I chose divorce. My mom and dad were both orphans. My dad died 2 weeks before I was born, and my mom didn't really have a support system, so we were just the two of us. I never lacked anything because my mother worked all her life to give me the life I have today, and didn't even have time for herself to start a new life again. She did all the little jobs possible so that we didn't miss anything. She deprived herself of food to give me food. I had very good clothes while she had none. I saw her make sacrifices again and again, and always with a smile. Frankly, I always thought she was an angel dressed in a human body. The only time she yelled at me was when I was 16, when I saw her getting sick and working at the same time. I wanted to help her by finding a job, but she was angry and told me it was not my job to take care of her, and it was up to her to take care of me. She wanted me to get really good grades to get into the best universities because it was the only way I can protect myself when she can't anymore. Even at university, she didn't want me to work. I had to be focused on my studies, but she wanted me to volunteer so that I could be an adult who could do something with his hands. I met my wife there while both of us were volunteering. My wife is a good person, but she was never close to her parents or her siblings. Yet she adored my mother since she met her. There were times when I thought she loved my mother more than she loved me, and we laughed about it. Deep down, I think she was looking for the bond between mother and daughter that she did not have from her mother. When I finished my studies, I found a job and we moved in together, but she wasn't comfortable that I call my mom every day. Mind you, those were 10 to 15-minute calls. But eventually she stopped bringing it up. 2 years later, I bought a house for my mother because we never had a house in our name. We lived from apartment to apartment. So for all the sacrifices she made, it was for me the least of it, and it was non-negotiable. That's where the problem started with my wife. She wanted me to think about us first. I told her my dream had always been to buy my mom a house since I was little, and that's what I had to do, but she complained about it to my mom. My mom didn't even know I bought a house for her, as it was supposed to be a surprise for her birthday. She was uncomfortable receiving the house because of my wife and told me that wasn't necessary, and that we could use it for us when we get married. I was furious. I told my mother that the house was for her, and that she could do with it whatever she wanted, but it was time for her to think about herself first. Our relationship survived that. We got married and then we had our own house. Our life was going well until 2 months ago when my mother fell ill. I wanted her to come and live with us so that I could take care of her, but my wife didn't want to. I then decided to rent an apartment with my own money right next to our house so that I could be close to her and go there to take care of her. But even that idea didn't sit well with my wife. Me and my wife don't have children yet. We both work. I usually come home at 6 p.m., but since my mother is sick, I go to see her and come home at 8 p.m. on weekends. I see her for 1 or 2 hours, and the rest of the time I spend with my wife. We go on dates. I always accompany her in her hobbies, even though she never went to mine. 2 days ago, she told me that she thought about it and she thinks I prioritize my mother too much. She told me that I had to choose between my mother and the life I want to build with her. The truth is that I never made her feel that way. We both work, but I'm the one who cooks and I pay a person to do the housework. I make sure I do the dishes she likes. She didn't even know what I like to eat because I never complain. I run her baths, give her massages, flowers. I write her poems that I hide somewhere in the house for her to find out. We go on a trip one weekend a month. I earn much more money than her. I told her to keep her money for herself, and I take care of all the bills, even hers. I always make sure to listen to her and consider her opinion. And I think I'm easygoing because I can change my mind to accommodate hers. But I realize that she tries to completely dominate me, and the only subject where I don't give her a choice is my relationship with my mother. So there, I'm going to have a talk with her and put some very clear boundaries. If she doesn't want to, well, we're going to divorce. My parents disowned me after I got pregnant. Now after 10 years, my father has cancer and wants to reconnect. At 16, I slept with my good friend Jared. He was 19 and illiterate, and the condom broke and my daughter was created. My parents, who were great until this point, didn't like that, hated Jared, and wanted me to get an abortion. I couldn't bring it over myself, and I wanted to keep the baby. Of course, my parents told me to pack my stuff and leave the house and their lives. So I did. I went to my friend Jared's house and his parents took me in. They weren't thrilled, but they've said that we all had to help as a new family member was in the making. In that time, my friend and I started to develop feelings for each other. I had my daughter, and about 2 months later, Jared's brother came back into their lives. He was a recovering heroin addict. As we had the baby, my mother-in-law told him he could not stay with us. Eventually, they let him stay more and more, and he was spending nights until he had a relapse and stole a bunch of stuff. My parents got wind of that. They dug up a bunch of stuff and found out that my mother-in-law also fought addiction after an accident she had 15 years ago left her addicted to pain meds. So they called Child Protective Services on us, and a whole damn investigation was opened. It was a dark time. I thought they were going to take my baby. In the end, they didn't find anything substantial. But them calling CPS on me transformed into a tradition over the years. As it was a small town, every mistake I made got back to my parents. I was half an hour late to pick up due to my job, CPS charges because of neglect. I was out after 10 p.m. with my toddler, CPS. Christmas, where loads of people stayed at Jared's house because it was a big family, CPS because many strange men were there. They eventually stopped it because they were fined for calling them on me unnecessarily. If they had done it more, I think it could have been an offense. The last call was 5 years ago. Eventually, Jared and I married when I turned 23, and we are quite happy. We worked retail jobs and studied. He went to school for a long time, and it took us longer than average to graduate, but we did. With a lot of help from his parents. Jared is now an engineer, and I work as a graphic designer. We were able to afford a big flat and finally moved out of his parents' house. Our lives look normal now. Anyway, a week ago I get a call from my mother who told me my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer and that his ultimate wish is to see me and my daughter again. I don't really know what to do, because while they didn't have to take care of me while I was pregnant, I wish they had at least supported me. And while I get that they were panicking because they thought I was going to be an unfit mother, they made my life hell for all. I'm finding out my girlfriend of 1 year is deaf as I'm on the bus on my way to see her for the first time. I met her in a match of League of Legends 2 years ago. We talked a lot, became really close, and basically started dating 1 year ago. We send each other pictures all the time and videos as well, so I never understood her apprehension to FaceTime me. We tell each other everything. I mean everything. She's presented me to her parents, and I know all her family. Today I was going to surprise her by visiting for the first time. I talked with her sister to make sure it was okay. Less than 30 minutes ago I got a text from her, and I'm copying and pasting a translated version. Hey love. You are so sweet and beautiful, and you deserve so much better. I know you are coming because Sarah told me. I'm sorry to ruin your surprise. I'd hate to see your face when you find out. I know we promised to always be truthful, but I've been lying to you all this time. That was her first paragraph, and I was so scared because I thought she was breaking up with me. But then she continued. You are too caring to ask why I never speak, why I never sent you a voice note. You are just too perfect, and there's no way you'd be with me if you knew. The reason is very simple. I was born deaf. I'm sorry you have to find out this way. I'm just a coward for not telling you sooner. I'll understand if you don't want to be with me anymore. God damn, I was expecting something totally different, and now I'm scared because I've never interacted with a deaf person, and I want to make sure she gets that I love her either way. I'm still in disbelief that she thought it'd be a deal breaker for me. I would do anything to try and make it work, but I hope she feels the same. Fiancé left me after he found out about my college days. I've been with my fiancé for 2 years and engaged for 2 months. I can go on and on about how great he is, but I won't waste your time. He's awesome. Him and my sister's boyfriend have gotten really close over the past year, and they talk at least twice a week, whether it be on the phone or FaceTime, or just hanging out with all four of us. Sister has been with her boyfriend since high school, so obviously her boyfriend knows me very well as my dating history. Last weekend, because of the lockdown, we all thought it would be fun to drink and hang out over FaceTime. It was a FaceTime double date, and we all had a blast. Laughing, playing drinking games, we all partied for over an hour, and that's when I was over it and decided to leave the party to call my sister directly without the boys in another room. Well, my fiancée and her boyfriend stayed on FaceTime and continued to get intoxicated together. During this time, I couldn't hear anything because I was in another room and was talking to my sister. Sister's boyfriend goes and tells a bunch of stories about my college days and how many guys I hooked up with. Just so everyone knows, I don't know the actual number. My first 3 years of college was literally one giant party. Not being too descriptive. I admit I was excessive, but at the time it was just what we did. I was single during that time, and me and my friends did a lot with a lot of guys. Most of them I couldn't even pick out of a lineup. But again, I was in college. Anyways, one of the parties I went to, I ended up hooking up with 4 different guys at the same time. This is relevant later. My fiancé is handsome as anything, and I know for a fact he's been with several women. We talked about our past a lot in the beginning of our relationship. I wasn't 100% honest with mine, and I can only assume that he was. After everyone hung up, me and my fiancé were lying in bed and about to sleep when he just calmly asked me, "Did you get ran through in college?" My response was, "Why would you ask that?" That's when he told me everything that my sister's boyfriend told him. He told me details that I'm not even sure are 100% true because, again, a blur. But a lot of the info was accurate, and so I just told him yes. It was one time. He continued asking questions about the other stuff, but the train running thing kept coming up, and he had a lot of questions about it that I answered the best of my knowledge. Fast forward to Wednesday. Things had been fine and normal, but on Wednesday, radio silence. He hasn't texted or talked to me in 3 days. The breaking point was tonight when he came home from work, and he asked me, "Are you friends with any of the guys on Facebook?" Again, not lying to him, I admitted that yes, I was friends with all of them. He left a few hours ago, and I have no idea where he is or what he's doing. I'm tempted to call the cops, but I feel like that will just make it worse. I feel like garbage. I hate my sister's boyfriend right now, but maybe it's not even his fault. Maybe I should have been more honest. I'm so lost. He is the best thing to ever happen to me, and I've never seen him like this before. Is this the end? He refuses to return my calls or texts. Am I the a-hole for not sharing my prize with a disabled child in a contest? Every summer my community has a cook-off competition. Usually about 20, 30 individuals or couples try to cook X, Y, Z, and then they can win a portion of the entry ticket fees while the rest go into the community parks. It's not summer yet, but they decided to do it early. This year it was pasta sauce. I've been going to these for years, ever since my wife and I moved here, but this is the first time I entered as a competitor. It was earlier today. One of the other competitors, I know her somewhat, only in passing, is a 15 or 16-year-old with Asperger's syndrome and autism. I don't know much about this condition, evidently. I'll call her Jessica. I guess a lot of people got wind of her being a part of the competition that we had news crews here taping her to put on the news. We've never had this before as far as I know. To make the story short, I won the competition, and $1,500. There's no second or third place prize, it's winner takes all. My wife and I were in shock because I like to think of myself as a decent home cook and take pride in my pasta sauce specifically, but to win a contest? We were tickled pink. We celebrated for about 20 minutes when the event organizers came to us. We might be able to guess where this is going, but they asked if we'd give our prize to Jessica as a gesture of goodwill. They said they'd get some publicity since news reporters are here. We obviously said no. $1,500 is a lot of money. So they then asked if we'd like to split it, 50-50 with Jessica. Likewise, we said no. I guess some nearby patrons overheard the conversation and chimed in. Apparently we're a holes and jerks for not sharing the prize at least. After a few moments, there might have been 10 other people all clamoring to us about how we're a disgrace to the community, how we didn't deserve the win, and more. We had to leave and haven't collected our winnings yet. We're meant to tomorrow from the mayor's office. I can't even imagine what's going to happen tomorrow. Are we the a-holes for not splitting our winnings with a mentally handicapped person for a cooking? My granddaughter is lesbian but won't tell us because we are Christians. My granddaughter has changed and is isolating herself from us. I think she is of lesbian descent, but but is afraid to tell us because we are religious Christians. How do I tell her that we will still accept her? My granddaughter Lynn is 16 and lives with me, her 67-year-old grandfather, and my wife, who's 62 since she was 4 years old. Our daughter, her mother, and her father died in a car accident, and we took her in. But lately Lynn has become very isolated and rude to us. I don't mean with that she always has to respect us because we are older, because this, in my opinion, is a stupid concept, but she sometimes calls us names without any reason or refuses to talk to us or eat anything my wife or I cooked. I should probably mention that me and my wife are Christians and religious. Lynn is not, but we accepted that a long time ago. 2 days ago, some packages for my wife were delivered to the door and I opened the door. Then suddenly my granddaughter comes basically flying down the stairs, grabs one of the packages, and runs up to her room. Lynn then leaves for a walk with a dog, and when I bring the items away to the bathroom, I catch a look through her door and see a rainbow flag hanging on the wall. I'm not someone who likes snooping in people's rooms, so I hold back myself from further investigating her room, and when she comes home I don't say anything. I told my wife and that I thought she might be a lesbian, but my wife reminded me that my daughter never, ever brought anyone home or mentioned anyone, and pretty obviously is not interested in girls. I should also mention that Lynn recently cut her hair short and started coloring it. Something that's normal for teen girls, I guess. I don't know. And neither does my wife. I think we both are just too old and born too long ago to really relate to our granddaughter a lot. There's another thing my wife noticed because I usually don't notice such things. But she told me that Lynn started wearing fewer dresses and skirts and more boy clothes, meaning the shirts you find in the boys department in a store. I don't really mind, but when I saw that rainbow flag I realized that maybe all these changes have to do something with her being a lesbian. Maybe she didn't tell us because she thinks we will not accept her because we are Christians, and both me and my wife were sadly raised in very homophobic times and environments. But humans can change, and although we maybe are old, we are not stupid and changed our minds over the years. Me and my wife definitely will accept Lynn. We love her and I don't care whom our granddaughter loves as long as she's happy. How can I tell that to Lynn without giving off that I snooped in her room? I obviously didn't really search her room, but I suppose the rainbow flag was not meant for my eyes. I stole over $20,000 in a very creative way in the 90s. I worked at a fast food chain in the 90s when I was in high school. When I worked there, they were in the process of phasing out denominational gift certificates. $5, $10, and $25. The way it worked was if you spent more than half of the certificate, they gave you the cash back. So if you ordered $5.50 worth of food and gave them one of the $10 gift cards, they gave you the $4.50 back in cash. My manager was in charge of destroying all the existing certificates as we transitioned to the more traditional credit card-looking gift cards. So my manager said he shredded the certificates like he was supposed to. But one night when I was closing, I found 2 boxes of the gift cards tucked deep in the dry storage room. They were filled with the certificates that were supposed to be shredded. So I scooped them up, brought them out to the dumpster and trash bags and threw them away. After we closed, I came back and recovered the back and brought the certificates home. I counted them. There were $1,025, $1,010, and $505 certificates. None of them had expiration dates. Total haul was $40,000 in fast food certificates. My manager never said a word. He couldn't. He had reported them destroyed weeks earlier. Over the next 3 years, my girlfriend and I toured every location in our state and the next 4 states ordering food and getting the change. We never kept track on a spreadsheet or anything, but we got good at knowing what menu items were just about half. After the first year, we started saving the change in a chute box and let it build up. I bought my first car for $7,800 cash from the change, and for some reason a kiddie cone was $1.05. If you gave them a $5 certificate, they gave you $3.95 back. We threw away a lot of kiddie cones. My family is disappointed that I beat my illness. They wanted me dead so they could take my money. I'm 47 and was diagnosed with cancer about 6 months ago. I don't know what happened, but I was misdiagnosed. It wasn't malignant as the initial diagnosis, and now I'm recovering. I don't know why, but it felt like Mom, who's 73, and my sister, who's 35, weren't all glad about me recovering. I didn't make a fuss, but I told my girlfriend, who's 38, about my observation. She told me not to worry and that they were probably still in shock. However, we were invited to my mom's house last Sunday, and that's when my 12-year-old nephew confirmed my suspicions. My little nephew was a bit angry all dinner and blurted out something about him thinking he was going to be rich soon because I was sick. It felt like a gut punch. I'm child-free, thankfully, so I don't really know when people start being a holes, but it felt like he's still too young for that. So the next explanation is that he's heard the adults around him. I laughed and looked at my family. They pretended that they didn't hear. Only my girlfriend watched me in horror. I asked my nephew why he would think he would get rich when I have my girlfriend. He was confused. I saw my sister turn around to that announcement. My girlfriend spent the rest of the evening holding my hand and caressing it. My mom called the day after, and she was dancing around the subject, trying to find out more. I never discussed my will with anyone, but what were they expecting? I've been with my girlfriend for 13 years. She's the love of my life and my family. What the F is going on? I'm changing my will, excluding my nephews who I thought I would leave some for. It's going to charity instead. And unless any of their names are charity, I don't think they'll be receiving a dime. People with a high income, what's it like to have all that money? Let's see. I am 33 years old. I am a nurse anesthetist, and last year I made about $320K. I work 4 days a week, 2 12-hour shifts, one 10-hour shift and one 24-hour shift in hospital, in a bedroom suite, and most days I work 14 to 16 out of the 24-hour shift. That's about 58 hours a week, but the job is not physically intensive. My base salary is about $213K, but with occasional overtime and being on call on weekends or whatnot, I end up with $300K plus a year. My partner is also a nurse anesthetist who made $300K a year, working 40 hours a week with occasional overtime. Sometimes it's mandatory if the surgery takes longer than expected. We work at the same place. We take several international vacations a year. We have 6 weeks of paid leave and many opportunities to go on 4-day weekend trips. We max out my $401K limit annually and saved on average $5K a month each. I came out of school with $287K in student loans and paid off $150K during my first year of employment. I continue to pay off my loans aggressively, $10-12K a month. I'm on track to pay them all off by December this year, 2023. My partner's parents pay for his education, so he incurred no loans. Life is super comfortable. Our monthly combined income is about $32K a month after taxes. We make it a point to keep our costs low because we want to retire early. We live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, paying around $2,400 a month. We will eventually buy a house, $700K or less. We do not have car payments. We own a Honda and a Nissan. I bought a house under my name from my parents, and I comfortably make payments on their mortgage of $1,000. So what's it really like? Priceless peace of mind, more money available, less stress, less fighting with your spouse, less family drama, more time to exercise, eat right, travel, read a book, help a friend or family in need. We do not intend to change our way of living. I hope I have answered your question. What's the darkest secret you found out about a family member relative? My dad was born in rural Texas in 1915. He was the youngest of 10 kids, all a year apart, so his oldest sibling, Henry, was about 11 years older than him. My dad's father died in an accident not long after he was born, so Henry became the man of the house at about age 11. When my dad was about 9 years old in 1924, a gang of men came through their small town, kidnapping children to work as slaves picking cotton about 400 miles away. Apparently, this was not an unusual occurrence at the time. My dad and 2 of his siblings were taken. Henry, who was now 18, came home from working on a cattle drive about a week later and found his mother hysterical about the kidnapping of 3 of her children. Being the man of the house at age 18, Henry strapped on his father's 6 guns, dual holsters, 1 on each hip, and set out to get his 3 siblings back. He gathered clues, children. Being the man of the house at age 18, Henry strapped on his father's 6 guns, dual holsters, 1 on each hip, and set out to get his 3 siblings back. He gathered clues about the gang from other townsfolk who also had children stolen. He headed east to where he was pretty certain the kids were taken, riding in empty train boxcars and even on the roofs of moving trains. It took him several weeks, but through talking to locals along the way who heard rumors of child abductions, he finally narrowed down to a few cotton farms where he thought the kids were. My dad, who was 9 years old at the time this happened to him, had tears in his eyes when he told me this part of the story. He and 2 of his brothers, along with about a dozen other kidnapped kids, had been held captive on this cotton ranch for over 2 months, and had given up ever seeing home or the rest of their family again. They were kept locked in a barn, fed scraps, and forced to pick cotton in the hot Texas sun. They were beaten if they cried or refused to work. One day, working in the fields, they heard Henry's voice calling their names. They looked up and saw my Uncle Henry walking towards them, and they started running toward him when one of their captors rode up on a horse and started yelling. Henry pulled one of his guns and shot the man dead. My dad wasn't even sure if the man had a gun, and it didn't matter. The gunshot drew a couple more of the rancher captors over, and Henry killed them both as well. My dad ran up and hugged my uncle, and he told them, "Let's go home." My dad tells me they rode on and in train boxcars all the way back west to their little Texas town, along with a couple other kids that were stolen from the town. When they got back to their small farm, my dad said his mom fainted when she saw them. He said Henry put the 6 guns away and never touched them again. There was no law enforcement, no investigation about what had happened, that my uncle murdered 3 men to get his siblings back. It was basically still the Wild West in Texas in the 1920s. The boys eventually all joined the Army and Navy and all served and survived World War II. My dad didn't tell me this story until after Henry had died. I had always known my Uncle Henry as a sweet, soft-spoken, diminutive, about 5'4", maybe 100-pound man who went on to own a printing shop. I would never have imagined him capable of the feats of heroics he performed at age 18 to bring his family back together. My fiancé wants his father to go down on me before we get married. My fiancé proposed to me about 8 months ago. We decided on having a relatively small wedding, which is in 2 days. He seems absolutely perfect, and we are very much in love. I have my V card, and so does he. He wanted to save it for marriage, and I wasn't fussed, so I agreed to save it. He has told me earlier that in his family the father checks the V card of the bride the night before the wedding. I laughed this off as it seriously sounds like a massive joke, but no, turns out he was dead serious. He wants me, the night before, to open my legs up in a small ceremony type thing so his dad can check me, while he, his brothers, and his uncle can watch so that they know I'm still pure. I told him fat chance I'm going to do that, and he was begging to me to go through with it and how important it is for him. He said he knew it was slightly embarrassing for me, but his mom did, and it will prove how much I love him, and that I have nothing to hide anyway as I still have my V card. I left and he was crying like a little baby. It was very dramatic. I want to call off the whole wedding because of this and never talk to him again. But at the same time, it's only one thing, and other than that we are genuinely perfect for each other, and I don't want to spend my life with anyone else, and it is very important to him and his family. I am currently at my friend's house, and I might stay here for the night. Tomorrow would be our last day as an unmarried couple, and I am straight up panicking. Update: I went and talked to him this morning. I told him that his father is not going to look at me and he needs to respect that. He was adamant that it needs to happen and accused me of lying about my V card. I was trying to be calm and rational, but he was not having it and just became more and more angry. I told him if he really loved me he would stand by me on this and tell his father no, to which he laid hands on me and said he didn't need to prove anything. I ended it right there and left him. Am I the a-hole for running away after my parents let my abuser abuse me? I screamed at my parents, told them I hated them, and now I'm running away. As a teenager I was quite badly abused by a family friend. He was my age, and he did all the abuse at school. He would purposely sit next to me and ride his finger up my thighs until he hit my sweet spot, and would finger me in silence during silent reading time. He'd also push me up against lockers and grab my chest whenever no one was looking. I eventually told my teacher what's been going on, and he said he would handle it, but nothing ever came about it. I was so broken in sight and didn't know what to do, so I kept it a secret until a few days ago when I finally decided to tell my mom and dad about the abuse. All was fine until my mom told me that she and my dad knew about the abuse. Apparently my teacher called them up one day and let them know how I felt. Now I was already upset that they knew and didn't do anything about it, but I would have let it go and that would have been fine until my dad started constantly bringing him to the house and letting my abuser work for him for weeks after. So they were knowingly letting my abuser get close to me and didn't care that I was being assaulted constantly. The abuse continued for weeks and I got super pissed. I screamed at them and told my parents I hated them, packed up all my crap, and am currently staying with a friend until I can get a bus back down to my other friends' place. My parents have been blowing up my phone trying to apologize and explain why they did what they did, but I have not answered as I don't know what to say. Honestly, part of me doesn't want to see them again, but the other part of me feels like an a-hole for not letting them explain why and just running away. Am I the a-hole?